Welcome to the Mill City Church podcast. For a list of messages, to stream live services, or for updates on events and what's going on here at Mill City, download the Mill City Church mobile app. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy today's message.
Going to do something a little bit different today. There's really not a whole lot of content on parenting in the Bible. That was a joke. Matthew chapter 19, I didn't charge my iPad. I just turned it on. It was at 1%. I never print my message until today. I just printed it today for some reason. It's as if the Lord knew. What we're going to do today is I'm going to share some scriptures to build a foundation, and then Sandy and I are going to have a seat in a couple of chairs up here, and we're going to do something really, really scary. We are going to take questions. How about that? Because I don't know what your questions are. I can speculate as to your questions, and it is all in the Bible. The Bible is a really good read. Bible tells you everything that you need to know, not everything that there is to know. And so we use it as our instruction manual for how to live a blessed life. As we find ourselves in Matthew chapter 19, verse 13 today, we have just a really short 3 verses that transition between one scene to another. And this is actually the passage that I use when we dedicate children. Then people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." And when he had placed his hands on them, he went on from there. The implication is that he placed his hands on them and he prayed for them, or he blessed them. And, we could go back to the beginning of 18 when Jake was speaking on a childlike faith. You can tie that into this. Unless someone comes to me, unless you come to me like a childlike faith, believing without seeing, just accepting it as truth. That's the simplicity. And as adults, it's so much more difficult because we have gone through life. We've had trials and we've had tribulations. We've had the other shoe drop. We've found out that we didn't read the fine print. We've been betrayed. We've been tricked. And the message of the gospel, free, unlimited grace, it doesn't make sense in our world. Now, you get a room full of children and say, "Hey, who wants free, unlimited grace?" And talk to any of our Mill City Kids leaders, and they'd say, they have a bunch of hands go up. "Yeah, that sounds good to me." But they're not asking the follow-up question, "Yeah, but what's the catch?" They don't even know that there is a catch yet. Not that there is a catch to the gospel. Not that there is a catch to the gospel. I'm talking about in life, right? So last week we had the opportunity to teach on a Christian marriage. And look how many people came back. Wasn't that amazing? This morning I want to talk about Christian parenting. And if you could zero in on perhaps 2 phrases here, you could zero in on verse 13, then people brought little children to Jesus. If you can start one place as a parent, and parenting runs the gamut, right? I see many people in here, you have adult children. Some of you, like me, have children that are just now adults, starting their adult life. There are parents here in the room that have high school, middle school, adolescents. There are many in here who have elementary, and many in here who have little bitty kids. You're just getting started. So we'll try to cover all of that. When we do the open forum, I do ask, can we keep it on the topic of parenting? Just keep it on topic of parenting, and if you have other questions, maybe if this goes well, if you all behave, then we'll do it again on another topic. Parenting, Christian parenting begins with that. Bring your children to Jesus. It is your responsibility. Our society will want to teach you that you need to allow your children to make up their own decisions on religion or God And while that's true in a sense, everyone has to make their own decision. As a parent, it is your responsibility to lead your children in the ways of righteousness, to lead them to Jesus. And verse 14 gives us the open arms of Jesus as he says, "Let the little children come to me." Let them come. But before we get into the Q&A, I'll just give you some foundational scriptures here. Colossians chapter 3, just to set the table. Verse 20, children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Not a whole lot of kids in here, which is totally fine with me. I don't really teach to kids. So parents, this is God's command to your kids. Your kids are to be obedient. Obey. And there are seasons of discipline. There are seasons of parenting, right? When they're young, like the youngest, you're just kind of moving them along, right? And then they get to a stage where there's a little bit better understanding, but mental cognitive development isn't right there. So let your yes be yes and your no be no. It is what it is. Because I said so is pretty much all that matters. I'm the boss. Kids need to know that. They're not the boss. At some point, they will be the boss, we hope. But when they're under your house rules rule. And you're the managers of your home. I would say last week's foundation is critical to this teaching. Colossians is a really great condensed book on Christianity. Ephesians takes the concepts and kind of expands them a little bit. Look at it. Ephesians chapter 6. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. It is right to obey. It is. But then he gives us a different word. Look at it. Honor. Honor your father and mother. It's the first command with a promise. So that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. You know, that's just it's a missing concept in today's society, honor. And we've all had bad leaders. We see poor leadership everywhere we go, and so it's easy to not honor, but the truth is we are to have an honoring, respectful attitude towards leadership. Your kids are to honor you. Why? Because God will bless them. I was at Walmart the other day. I go to Walmart more times than I should. And I heard this constant cry, scream, moan, wail. And it took me a couple of aisles to actually land in the intersection with this child. Just moaning and crying and just making a scene. And the parent, I don't remember if it was, I think it was a mom, it doesn't matter, just walking around like, I'm like, don't you hear that? Take that child out. It's disrespect to the parent, first and foremost, and to everybody else. And what's sad is they're setting their children up for failure. The world does not revolve around your children. The world revolves around God. And His precepts and His plan is right and it is good. And when we follow it, there's blessing. Don't you want your children to be blessed in everything they do? You have a responsibility to help them in those stages when they need it. There's a promise. We find that in Exodus chapter 20, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land. Now, a question comes up often, especially to adult children. What if my parents don't know the Lord? There's not a prerequisite there. In the same way, wives share the gospel by honoring their husbands who don't know the Lord. Children can share the gospel, can lead their parents to the Lord just simply by honoring them. Proverbs chapter 1 says this, listen, my son, to your father's instruction. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. They are a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck. Now, parents, we do drive this boat. And so Paul immediately goes on to give us some instruction. Colossians 3, verse 21, fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. Ephesians chapter 6, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the teaching and training and instruction of the Lord. Look at these two passages. What's the first thing that jumps out? Where's the instruction to the mother? I think that's a clue into the power that we have as fathers to set the tone in our home. We talked about that a little bit last. We hold the keys to this, and we have the power. And so we have a tendency as fathers to do these things, to exasperate, to embitter. When we're overly harsh, that Captain Caveman that is naturally wired in us, that is dangerous and painful when it's used incorrectly, and it is like first nature. I mean, we saw that in the curse, and so we give a warning here to not let the captain out. Proverbs 22 says this, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. That's another promise. Parents in the room, you have adult children that do not serve the Lord. At some point, they have to make a decision for themselves. And how you lead them, how you raise them, how you train them in the earliest stages. Joey's an excellent example. Joey was baptized last Sunday. His parents were here. Is that your mom back again? She came back even after that sermon. How about that? I don't see Dad. Just kidding. It's like, he said 38 years. They prayed for him. Was it worth it? You bet. Absolutely. Don't give up. And for those of you who are still raising your children, let me just assure you, this will not return void. The things that you do now are putting roots in the ground that will produce fruit. Perhaps my favorite scripture that we have tried desperately to live up to is Deuteronomy chapter 11. Fix these words of mine in your hearts and minds. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. In other words, all the time. All the time. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates, so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land the Lord swore to give your ancestors, as many as the days that the heavens are from the earth. Parenting is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. Do as I say, not as I do doesn't work anywhere, especially not in the home. You must live it out. You need to have your kids in a place where they will be spiritually fed. Well, they will learn the ways of the Lord. You need to have them around people who will endorse and will come alongside you and help you to pour into your children. My pastor in Springfield used to say, you don't grow watermelon in Alaska. And that's true. You don't raise your kids expecting them to live a life that's pleasing to the Lord when you're not in a place where they can be spiritually nourished. And the things of this world are distractions that keep us from thriving spiritually. Sports are awesome, but your kids aren't going to the NFL. I was meeting with a gentleman this week who played professional soccer, and he was like, he spent 2 years, age 15 and 16, in the UK playing club soccer, completely away from his family. Apparently just an amazing soccer player. Guess what he's not doing today in his 30s? Playing soccer. Who cares? Yeah, but it's going to teach him what? Teamwork, and you can teach him that in God's house. We've got an amazing team here at Mill City. I'm surrounded by amazing people at Mill City that are part of the leadership team, part of the volunteer team, part of the Mill City team. I love being here. I love doing life with the people that God has placed in this family. And guess what? When I get to heaven and I lay out the things that I've done with my life, there's going to be a lot that isn't burnt away. And sometimes we just got to think a little bit deeper. Now, many of you have not always lived a life of faith. And your kids, you're dealing with that right now because your kids, they don't know you. Think of some parents that they came to the Lord at a their kids are in high school, and the mom and dad that they knew their whole life is now just a totally different person, and they don't know what to do with that. Be patient with them. Don't Bible thump them. Just continue to live your life pleasing to the Lord. And trust Him. He's very, very capable of using your life to show his glory. Finally, and Sandy can come out, I've got a back to Exodus chapter 20. This is an interesting verse. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or in earth beneath or the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord, am a jealous God. Look at this. Punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. It's a word of caution to parents. You are putting seed in the ground, whether you realize it or not. And the effects of it, this is my wife. Isn't she cute? But here's the promise. Look at this, verse 6. Showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You know, you got amazing power as parents. And the things that you do as parents bring blessing and curses. And God is an incredibly gracious God who loves you dearly and wants to help you in all that you do, including parenting. And what this is saying is, and you know, it's so easy, especially in certain Christian circles, they zero in on that first verse, generational curses. You know, I'm just going to call that reaping and sowing. You don't have to over-spiritualize that. If you sow pain, guess what you're going to get? If you sow hatred, if you sow anger, if you sow, strife, you're going to get it in another season and more. But when you start sowing righteousness, oh my goodness, God's blessings are so much greater. So with that as a foundation, I've asked Jay and Andy to come and help you with your questions. They know me very well. They can interpret your question into something that I can understand. So I hear that Jay has one right out of the gates, and he said it's a softball. So let's hear it. Well, and so if you have a question, just come line up like you would for prayer, and you can give your question to Andy or Jay, and then they will take turns back and forth here.
Well, I have like half a dozen, so I'm just kidding.
Well, let's start with one. And oh, by the way, remember, we're keeping this a topic of parenting, just for fun.
So you mentioned distractions, worldly distractions. And I think for a lot of parents, especially those of teenagers, I have found that a huge distraction in my kids' lives is social media. There's some that I don't even know that exist. How do you, and I haven't seen a ton of like immediate, I heard this, therefore I am now this or doing this, but I know there's an influence there. So how do we navigate social media with our kids? And thoughts on, I had gotten rid of all of my social media because I saw what it was doing to me, but I'm blind now to the things that are going on in social media. So how do we navigate social media with our kids? And thoughts on us as the parents having some presence, at least to have an idea of what's going on.
I've been talking this whole time. I figured you're just chomping at the bits. I have an initial thought, but I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, my initial thought isn't something I think I should say. Which is, don't let them have it. So,
that's wise.
and all the students in the room are like, shh.
No.
No, I do think you need to take a proactive step in that and know what you need to have influence in what they're posting, in who they're allowing into their life, the voices that they're allowing, what they're viewing when it comes to that. And again, I think students are like, don't do that. But as a parent, you do have a responsibility to teach your child how to handle that. Don't let them just have it and then have free reign, because they're going to find themselves in situations that they really shouldn't be in, and that can cause harm and damage to their future.
Yeah, and fortunately, Michael's 26 and Emily is 15, so we straddled some of that generation there, and we've actually enlisted Michael and Ashley and Lauren to help us with Emily, and they're more strict than we have been. So if Emily wants something, she does have to ask as far as an app of some kind, and she broke the rules a couple of years ago. She started a YouTube channel, and we found with a friend, and we found out about it, and she did it completely behind our back, and had been running it for 3 weeks or something like that, and so we called the friend's parents, told them that we didn't allow that, and had them delete it, and then she lost her phone for several weeks, and was super healthy for our entire family. So.
And in that, it wasn't that, like, what she was doing wasn't bad, because she was sharing Jesus on it. It was the fact that she did it behind our backs.
She hid it, yeah.
And so we need to teach our children early on that that's not acceptable, because they're going to carry that into their relationships in the future, into their employment. That's how, that kind of thing, if it's not taught early, can turn into divisive behavior in the future that can damage a lot of people.
Yeah. And we also don't allow her to just friend anybody. Well, this was a friend of this friend. That doesn't count. So we have also managed that as well. Another question?
Yeah, I have a question. You asked me to think of something, so I did.
Not one about tongues. No, we're not talking about
no,
tongues
not
today.
about tongues or Calvinism. Jay and I were actually chatting about it, and you've mentioned several times that we have a broad range of parents here in the church. So do you have any advice for people who have openly defiant children towards faith or religion of all ages, an 8-year-old, a 15-year-old, even an adult child, not, I don't know what I want, I haven't made my decision, but openly defiant against you? How do you lead that gently?
I would, in anticipating something similar to this, I was thinking about stages of discipline. And I mentioned it earlier. You've got the youngest, you've got the baby to toddler, where you're just trying to teach them, to line up, just to eat, and then you get into the age like 3 to 8, and these are critically formative years where you're putting foundation in place. And that foundation must include obedience. And it's not to be really discussed. There's no negotiation. There's no debate. It's my way or the highway. And that's not dictatorial. It's just good parenting. And that will help in this, Andy, in answering this question is, some of you are dealing with, as I said before, you were raising your children before Christ. And so you're having to try to turn the ocean liner after the fact, and that's a totally different challenge. So I would say, first and foremost, to those that have the younger kids, this is so critical. And talk to any parents that are dealing with this type of situation, and they would encourage you, get your kids grounded in the faith as early as possible. As early as possible. But then you get into that like elementary stage where it's, I call it obedience with explanation. Let me explain to you why this is what you are to do. And because cognitively they're able to absorb that and learn from it. But then you get into middle school and high school, man, you are like influencer. We spanked our kids. We did not beat our kids. I remember the first time I spanked Michael. He was 2. We kind of had that as somewhere we learned that was like the age where it was appropriate to consider. And I remember the first time we were at a restaurant, and it was another couple, and they had a young child as well, and we were in kind of a private room, and they were just being a nuisance. And I took him to the bathroom, and we're not doing this. We get back out there, just a few minutes, of course, it's back into horseplay, and then so I took him again, and I said, listen, I'm going to take you again. If we're coming back here, you're going to get a spanking when we get home. And he didn't know what that was because I'd never spanked him before. I mean, he kind of knew what it was, but he'd never experienced the trauma of it. But sure enough, we're back in there, and it was the same deal. So thumb drops, fun stops. And so I said, hey, I told you. And so, that's really critical, parents. It's not 1, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4. No, it's 1. Do it. And that sets a standard that they live by, and it will last the rest of their life. But we went to the bathroom. I said, I told you it was going to happen. And sure enough, we got home. I took him to the bedroom, and I gave him one good swat. That's really all it took. And then we both cried. I mean, it was incredibly painful. And then we learned this before we had kids. I think it was you give them a chance to cry, and then you take them in your arms, and you assure them, explain to them what happened and why. And then I always said this: there's nothing you can do to make me not love you. And I said it as many times, eye to eye, as I had to penetrate their heart. And then I didn't live there. We're not going to make them sit in their poop for days at a time, not to live down their mistakes. Do you want people to do that to you? Then don't do that to your kids. So these critical formative years, but then there's an age where spankings will actually do them more harm emotionally because they're too old for it. And then you're dangerous. And so, my kids didn't have near as many spankings as they needed, especially Lauren. But she turned out pretty good, okay. Patience, and live a life worthy of the Lord. And let them watch you do it. And when you make mistakes, you apologize as quick as possible. And it teaches 3 things. No one is perfect. Not even you, and certainly not them. It models what you do when you make a mistake. You ask for forgiveness. And then it also teaches them what to do when somebody asks for forgiveness. You forgive them. So it teaches them to forgive. It models what to do when you make a mistake. So those are critical things. Jay?
I think you kind of hit on it a little bit, but more specifically, and maybe more expounding, how do you discipline without jeopardizing the fruit of the Spirit, specifically patience, gentleness, self-control?
Okay. I have illustration. Lauren was, I believe, in the 4th grade. She was the one who tested me the most. She's very strong, incredible, will be an incredible leader. But I remember standing in the library of our house when we lived in Oshkosh, and I was yelling at her. I mean, just giving it to her. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me, and he said, if you don't stop, you're going to break her spirit. When he speaks and you listen, it will impact you, and it will impact them for the rest of their lives. That was it. I was like, okay, this is the moment where with her, I had to bite my tongue, wait for a period of time, and then address it. And I'm not saying I always did it perfect, and she will be the first probably to tell you that I didn't. But I knew that I could not do that. That was going to damage my daughter, and I did not want her to be damaged. I loved her. And that was, you have to be walking with the Lord. You have to be walking with the Spirit. You have to be open to listening to him and being obedient. And just the way we want our kids to be obedient, we have a Heavenly Father who is seeking that from us. And when we are in the same way with our children, there's blessing that comes from that obedience. And so Lauren and I have a very deep relationship, a friendship. I have great respect for her, the words that she speaks. There was an openness for her to be able to the Lord has used her to convict me in moments. And so I think just that step of obedience in that moment, back when she was in the 4th grade, paved the way for the relationship that we have today, and the mother that I see that she is already to little Tommy, who is as precious as can be, but he is strong. There's she's reaping.
In a different season and more. I had an episode very early in Michael's life. I don't know if he was 2 yet. That was the first time Sandy went away for a weekend and left me alone with him just for one night. And we had this table in the kitchen, and he was coloring, and he got out of the lines. And it was a white painted table, and he got crayon on the tabletop, which was, I have to say, oil base and wiped up completely, very, very easily. And I walked in, and I went Incredible Hulk just like that. And he just was crushed. And he said to me, "Daddy, will you still be my friend?" I thought, we've always had a relationship. I would say with all 3 of the kids, I just like to talk to them. And I consider it my responsibility to teach them things that I have learned in all walks of life, whether it's relational or it's theological or whatever way that is. And we've just always had quality time together where we just talked about stuff. And I gave Michael permission very early in his teenage. Listen, I'm highly emotional. Don't not tell me things just because you're afraid of my initial reaction. It's going to be bad anyway. Just tell me and let me get it over with. And that has helped us. And he's been, you give him permission to talk. They still have to be obedient. They still have to honor. They still have to be compliant. But if they've got a question, who better to ask? We had the sex talk when he was 12, and Sandy's like, "You said what?" I said, "Well, I don't know what they're going to teach him at school. Better he learn it all from me." And it was tense in the Penske truck that day. But turns out it was the week before they had the sex deal in 5th grade, and I'm like, well, I'm going to tell him, I don't know what they're going to teach him. I taught him way more than they taught. But at least it was me.
Okay, actually have a couple.
Oh, let me one more thing. Oh, here's the key. If you want the fruit of the Spirit, you better be walking in the Spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't expect to display the fruit of the Spirit in any walk of your life if you're not living by the Spirit. That's a you thing, not a kid thing. That's a you thing, and your relationship with God has to be first and foremost, and that will help you with the fruit of the Spirit. Thank you.
Well, this kind of plays into it as well. Can you give some examples or help with being an instructive father versus being a tyrannical father?
I can. I have an incredibly amazing wife who is radically different than I am. And she too has permission to speak into my life. And she's helped me in many, many ways. From the very beginning, we seem to always have, one of us has the long fuse. And that's just, praise God for that. I can't remember a time when we were both like really short fused one evening where, our kids just took it in the teeth. And so that's a huge blessing. One of the gifts that the Lord has given me that I am most thankful for is my ability to apologize. I mean, I could say my humility, but that's awfully prideful. No, I mean, my heart, I want life all around me. Who doesn't? I want people, when we spend time together, man, I want you to walk away from a conversation with me stronger, more full of life and vitality, and when I don't do that, that hurts my heart. It really does. I carry that. And that doesn't mean that there aren't cross conversations, because, some things just need to be said. But out of love and compassion, we want life all around us. And, I just had an episode, I shared it not too long ago, I can't remember when I shared it, about Emily. And I blew up at her one morning, and this was just last January, and Sandy pulled me aside, and it was just between the two of us. She didn't do it in front of Emily. And she said, this is a really big day in her life. And you just mowed her over. And, the fact that she said that to me in the right time, in the right place, with no audience, helped me to receive it. And then, fortunately, I've made so many mistakes. I have a good history of positive episodes where you go to somebody and you say, I completely messed that up. And I'm really sorry. And when you apologize to somebody, and just apologize, and you can't add the it was because. You've just completely pulled back your apology. I am sorry I did this. It was wrong. Will you forgive me? Man, you want to talk about ointment that heals. And so, it's humility. It's owning your mistakes and trusting the Lord. And He has just an incredible grace. The Bible says, humble yourself before the Lord and He will lift you up. You want, relationships that thrive and are repaired immediately, are stronger because of it. How many times have I apologize to Sandy. It's just, hey, that's what you do. That will help you to keep your own focus of just how broken you are. I'm not perfect here, and I know that better than anybody. And so when you enter into those transactions, man, God blesses that, and He builds your world, relationships all around you. So I would say the number one ingredient to tyrannics is owning your mistakes and apologizing them as quickly and as publicly as you can.
I think you hit on a lot of this, but specifically, when you see behavior issues, when you see disobedience rising up in your kids, maybe not a specific incident, but you just see that rising up in them, how do you navigate using words of encouragement, expressing how much you love them, trying to direct them with words, as opposed to some sort of discipline? And how do you know when one stops working and when to go to the other?
Good question.
How do you navigate that?
How do you know when to?
So when you see that rising up,
you see disobedience.
You see this happening.
A lot of that starts with an attitude.
Yep.
You get. Sandy and I, when I can tell when we have not had quality time together because short fuses and things that typically aren't rubs become bigger deals. And, you end up just misfiring. How about that? I got to own that because I'm the one who should be scheduling the date nights, right? I'm the one that should be navigating that. And it's real easy to get busy between the church and job and relationships and all different stuff. It's real easy in our world to just almost live different lives. And so I have to be mindful of that. And I would say the same thing with kids. And listen, your kids will respond and react to your relationship with your spouse. When you're misfiring or when you're in friction, it sends your kids in a tailspin. And they respond to safety. And mom and dad are the safest, or supposed to be. I would say God created mom and dad to be home base, safe. And so it's really critical that that relationship stays safe. And then your kids have, those boundaries where they can function just fine within that. But in the same way I described this, when you start to see misbehavior, you give the kids the benefit of the doubt. They're not trying to defy you. If you've done the right work, kids can be kids. But when you start to see some of that stuff, that's your time to recognize, hey, they probably haven't had the kind of quality time with mom and dad like they have, and so they're responding in a way to try to get that attention, I would say, oftentimes. So if you catch that early, then you can turn it.
Yeah, I'd echo that. The relationship that you cultivate with your children is going to help you walk through those situations with them. I don't want to continue to use my kids as examples.
But they're the only ones we have.
The only ones we have. Yeah.
Let me tell you how you raised your child.
But you, again, it's that relationship with the Lord, your relationship with your spouse, and your relationship with your kids. It's all about cultivating that. And the number one priority is your relationship with the Lord. And he will guide you through those. He will give you wisdom. He can give you knowledge. He can help you know things that are under the surface that you can't see, that maybe what is causing them to behave in that way. Seek the Lord, ask him, pray. Lauren, when she was little, again, like I said, she just strong. And she would test me to see how far she could go. And when she was 2 years old, when she would nap, I would fast and I would pray over her. And I would see a change in her behavior for weeks. And then when I'd start to see that rise up in her again, I would fast and I would pray over her while she was napping. And again, I would see it. And it would get further and further apart. I wouldn't have to do it as much. And eventually I didn't have to do that. Emily has a very teachable spirit. She is a communicator, has been a strong communicator since she was little. She would try to plan my days. I'd have to teach her, Mom plans the days, you don't. Because she loves to be active, she loves to be social, she loves to be around people and do things. And so, but when I see things rise up that are behaviors that I don't want them to get bigger than what they are, it's just a conversation with her. But I always bring it back to Scripture so that they understand why it is. And she'll process it. That's just, it's the way that she's wired, and she'll think about it, and she'll weigh that against what God's word is, and then she'll come back, and then she'll let me know about the work that the Lord did in her in private. So it is that conversation. Lauren was different, and Michael was different. He didn't require as many.
And I would just point that out as something I also thought about in prepping for this is, it's incredible, isn't it? If you got multiple children, isn't it just stunning that such individuals, radically different from each other, would come from the same source? I mean, it's just amazing. And we have 3 kids that are really spaced out. Michael is almost 5 years older than Lauren. Lauren is 7 years older than Emily. There's 11 years between Michael and Emily. And so we had some captive time with each of them in that way. That will be different from some of you. But, we treated them different. We didn't, well, just because Michael did this way. And the only time I say stuff like, well, I never had to do this with your brother, is when I'm joking. Okay, and I do say that because it is funny. But I don't, our kids are just radically different, and so we have to treat them differently. We have to discipline them differently. We talk to them differently. And that, that takes time spent to get to know your kids. And Michael now works with me at the bank, and we're together all the time. Something happened a few years ago. We were in Chicago for Christmas, I think it was, and they'd been married maybe 3 or 4 years, and they wanted to go downtown with his cousins, and this had to have been 21. I'm like, you're not going to downtown Chicago. You will get shot. And I'm like, there's no way. And Sandy was really, we were like, we're not doing this. And so I put my foot down, and Michael didn't go. Michael and Ashley did not go, but he came to me later in the day and said, hey, I am an adult man. I am married. You can't tell me what I can and can't do. It was very respectful. It was very honoring. And it was true. And so I, as I always do, apologized, and I just said, hey, listen, I care. I want you to live. There's no reason for you to go to downtown. What are you going to do down there? There's nothing for you to do. And so we agreed to still be friends. I hope this has been fun. I hope this has been helpful. Any parting shots here?
I've had multiple questions on blended families. So I think there's really some wounding here with that, some struggle.
Yeah.
And one of the questions was a mom's navigating a broken family. The father is away for extended time, and he's an unbeliever. Any advice?
First, pray. That's a different dynamic than we've had to deal with, and there are many in this church that are living that out, and my heart hurts for that. And there are certain things that you can and can't do in that situation. We believe that as a parent, you are the one who sets the rules in your house. And you can set those and maintain them. I believe that. When you have another parent outside the situation, truth be told, there's nothing you can do about that. And that makes it an enormous challenge, And so I have heard and understand that when kids come back from being at the other parent, there's a learning curve. They're just, you can imagine they're coming they're in a tailspin, and it's just it's a vivid reminder every week or however often it happens. And so you must be patient. You must be grounded in your relationship with the Lord, and doing your best to lean on Him and others who will walk with you, walk alongside you. We believe in the church. We believe in being a part of the church. And by that I mean, if not this church, a church family, a local church, a body, a family. And that's just that will pay such great dividends. And you be here, be involved, be in relationship with people. That will help. You're going to need them just to cry on the shoulder sometimes, because it's really, really hard.
I look at that with your spouse is an unbeliever, and you're having to, and they may not be present all the time, or they may be in the home. There may be a divorce, but God, your relationship with the Lord is the most important thing, because my aunt, difficult situation. Early on, 2 young kids, and the man that she married was not the man she thought that she married, but she did love him to the point until he passed away. She never remarried, but she ministered to a lot of single women in that. And even though this person's not a single woman, she let them know that you have a heavenly Father who can fulfill. He can fulfill all of those things that are lacking, that you're not receiving from a husband or a father. He can do that for your children. He can fill in that gap. And so if I believe if you recognize that and you seek him, and as Steve said, you are planted in a body of believers. You are in a church, whether that's here or somewhere else. God is going to use other people to help you and speak into you. Discipleship would be a key thing. I'd be like, find somebody who can disciple you and walk that path with you. For her, another female, right? Because I know that I know the God that I serve, his character and how the Bible describes him, and the Bible is true, that he is not going to desert you. He is not going to leave you to raise those kids on their own. He's not going to abandon them. One of the best things you can do for your kids is to have them in the presence of God.
Yes.
Get them to the church. Get them to youth. Get them to kids. I can guarantee, because I've been in all the areas, that God's presence is over there in youth. And I've witnessed, and the youth leaders, and Jake and Krista, they can speak into it, the lives that have been changed by students just being there in the presence of God. He is the one who transforms the heart. He's the one who does the work within them.
Right.
You have a child who doesn't have a teachable spirit, and they're just getting defensive and fighting everything you say and your guidance. Pray. Because God can change the heart. He can soften their heart.
Yes.
So again, that reliance goes back to the Lord, our relationship, and cultivating that with the kids. I believe in that situation, that mother, as she has them in the presence of God, as she's pouring into them the word of God, that's not going to return void. They may have a season of rebellion, but every kid has to make their faith their own. They can't live on the faith of their parents. It has to become their own. But once they make that decision, they will not turn away from that. They will follow the Lord with everything they have. So lay that foundation and just trust him. Trust him. It may not look like he's working in the moment, but he's working.
And certainly the relationships are going to be critical to help you, because there are people in this church who will come alongside, and it will become a family, and you're going to need others to validate what you've taught. You're going to need other people. Just in closing, and we won't close with worship today, we'll pray out. I shared my pastor in Springfield shared this strategy with me years ago, and I always had this planned into Michael's life. On his 13th birthday, I took him on an extended trip. And we went to Canton, Ohio to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It was really, really cool trip. But it was a 3-day trip. And on that trip, we were in the car for 12 hours each way, and it was planned to have some very, very clear discussions. And on that trip, we wrote a contract. And still have it. I made some commitments to him, and he made some commitments to me. And I'll just share them with you. My commitments to him were, I will not leave you or our family. I will not have an affair with another woman. I will always keep my heart right before the Lord. I will continue to keep you in a place where you will have the opportunity to grow spiritually. His commitments were, I will honor my father and mother and obey them. I will have a good relationship with my father, mother, and sisters. I will not date a girl who is not a Christian. I will not have sex before marriage. I will not marry without the blessing of my parents, and I will serve the Lord throughout my life. He wrote them down as I was driving. We signed it. There's limits to what you can actually, have I always kept my heart right before the Lord? Well, have you? Let's be honest here. But, to the best of my ability. And there was one season right before he and Ashley started dating. He dated a girl that was not a believer, and it was incredibly frictious in our home for that season. And he was 16, and he asked Mom first, and she said, well, you have to ask your dad. And he was 16 years old. I couldn't make him do anything. There's nothing I could do. I could give him counsel, and I told him, this isn't going to go well. I'm just telling you. But I can't make you do anything. And so he went ahead and made the decision on his own. And it was 8 weeks of really difficult time in our home. And he made a decision to break up with her after what seemed like years, but it was only 2 months. And then he said to me, thank you for letting me learn from my own mistakes. And, we talked through that season, and our relationship was stronger, but it was also during that season that he had his little drift. And there was our incoming youth pastor, Stephen, who led him back. And it was that relationship that validated all the things that we had raised Michael to believe. And he needed somebody else that he had a respect for that would speak into his life. And so, where did that come from? The church. Emily is an incredible musician, and from the day from her earliest ages, we always had worship music going on in our house. We had life groups in our house. We even had church in our house for a year almost. And there was just always worship going on in our home. That just has been rooted in her at a very, very early age. And bring your children to Jesus and live a life worthy of the Lord. And you watch what he will do with you as a parent. Amen. Inevitably, you have questions that didn't get answered, or maybe come back next service. Maybe it'll go different, I'm sure. But hey, our heart is that you would thrive in every area of your life, and in marriage, in parenting, in work life, every area of your life. God's blessing be upon you. And we're here to help. If you have questions that didn't get asked, perhaps they're individual questions that would be specifically applicable, maybe one-on-one versus in a group setting like this. But feel free to reach out to us, and we will be happy to help.
Thanks for joining us for today's message. Don't forget to check out the Mill City Church mobile app or visit us on social media at MillCityWI to find service times and ways to get involved. If you made a decision to follow Jesus for the very first time or would like to be baptized, we want to hear from you. Click the link in the description to get in touch. Thanks again for checking out the podcast. We'll see you again soon.